it's gonna be alright.
Today is International Pronouns Day, which is a day particularly important to people who identify as transgender or gender non-conforming. Being misgendered can have a huge impact on somebody and their personal well-being. It also can be used as a form of abuse for somebody, and that just isn't right. Today is about raising awareness, getting people to have conversations, and understanding why it is so important to understand the pronouns that somebody wishes to be used for them. Have a good day.
So I'm sure a lot of you have seen that clip previously. That's Julie Cook from Cheshire County Police showing the police force's support for International Pronouns Day, which is not actually a joke. In fact, it is a deadly serious public holiday from the LGBTQIA++ community, because of course it is. Nowadays, pronouns are becoming more and more of a joke, whether it's in people's Twitter bios or just the absurd lengths that people go to tell you that they actually aren't a he or a she, but they are a zoo or a groom or whatever noise that you want to replace as a way of describing someone. The idea of promoting these different pronouns and announcing your pronouns is one which trans people in particular have always found quite bizarre. When you tell people what your pronouns are, you're just saying to someone, this is how you should refer to me after I've left the room, as though you're quite egocentric, so you're going to be the centre of conversation once you're no longer there. But I could rant about pronouns all day, and I have in the past. I think a lot of us are perfectly aware of how dumb this is. But I think what really kind of took people aback is that International Pronouns Day came not too long after another LGBTQIA++ holiday, and that is International Coming Out Day, where people discuss their coming out and just, kind of make it a bit more accessible for other people to be more open about themselves. Now, I will admit, at that time, I was actually thinking, that's not too bad a day to highlight some of the difficulties that there can be with being LGBT. But following Pronoun Day, I did a little bit of digging because I wanted to see just how many of these public holidays are there from the community. And there's a lot. There's a very excessive amount of holidays, remembrance days, everything which you can think of as a way of the community to pat themselves on the back or to spread awareness. So I thought it might be quite interesting and educational, because I want to educate people here on just what the different queer holidays actually are throughout the year. And there are indeed quite a lot. In fact, Wikipedia lists around 25. Now, it should be said that some of these are also days that aren't specifically gay days, such as International Holocaust Remembrance Day, and there's also World AIDS Day. So in this video, I'm going to be focusing on the holidays that are exclusively LGBTQIA+++. So I'm going to start with the first letter in the alphabet, which is the L for lesbian. Now, lesbians actually have two holidays just to themselves. The first of these is Lesbian Visibility Day, which is held on the 26th of April every year, which gives a platform to women who love women. Then there is also International Lesbian Day, which is, of course, completely different because it comes almost 6 months later. But really, there isn't much of a significant difference between them, and this is a recurring theme amongst these LGBT national days. You will often see the same issues repeating themselves over and over and over. So next we're going to be moving on to the G, the gay in LGBT, and interestingly enough, I couldn't find any. On Wikipedia there was none mentioned. I've not been able to find any in any searches either. So interestingly, the community will tell you that it's gay men who are the ones who are in control of the whole LGBT narrative, and yet these people never saw fit to give themselves their own national day at all. That's quite interesting, really. Maybe that's something a lot of us should be taking a bit more of a leaf out of. But let's move on to the B, where the B has 3 specific days for themselves. Well, I say days because they have a whole week to start off with. Now, Bi Week is held every year from the 16th to the 23rd of September. It's used to spread awareness of bisexuals. Did you know that bisexuals are a thing? You got a whole week to get over that idea. I know, it's mad, right? But it culminates in a particularly important holiday. International Celebrate Bisexuality Day, also known as Bi Visibility Day. So after a whole week of festivities, you then have a day for the exact same purpose. This comes at the very end of Bi Week on the 23rd of September, and it is basically just a continuation of the preceding week. But there is one more specific day for bisexual people. I said day, it's actually a whole month. Bisexual Health Awareness Month, which was launched in March of 2014, which spreads awareness around sexual health within the bisexual community. That's something which I think is important. However, when you've got all of these other national holidays, is this not something that could have been covered off in any of the preceding days? Whenever you hear about bisexual awareness and bisexual discussions, you will often hear bisexual health. This is the same across the whole of the LGBT spectrum. The health always comes as part of whatever else they're talking about. So you could condense all of these, but you know, there is always that meme of bisexuals being greedy, so a month, a week and a day just for themselves, well, that's quite special. But let's move on to my specialist subject, and that of course is the transes. Now, of course, the transes have quite a lot of their own days. Now, some of you might remember earlier this year, I did a video on Transgender Day of Visibility, a day of celebrating the awareness of being trans and that how you should recognise that, you know, anyone could be trans. Now, as I mentioned, I've done a video on this, so I'm not really going to touch any more on it. But instead, I'm going to focus on some upcoming holidays. Transgender Awareness Week, for instance. This is effectively the trans community's version of Lent, building up to what is arguably our most sacred and holy holiday, which I will touch on in just a moment. But in the way that Trans Visibility Day discussed trans issues, Trans Awareness Week also discusses issues. The key difference being that one was just a day of visibility and the other one is a whole week of awareness, which, you know, do mean completely different things. But this builds up to the most important day of the year, which is Trans Day of Remembrance. So I have covered this in a previous video, and I will be touching on this year's sacred day in November as well. But for those who aren't aware, Trans Day of Remembrance is effectively a day in which the trans community looks at deaths of trans people, particularly trans women, across previous 12 months, doesn't take into account any other factors that led into their murders, and simply says that these people were murdered and then places the blame on people that they don't really like, including radical feminists, conservatives, anyone who disagrees with their narrative. They generally get the blame for a Brazilian prostitute in a quite dangerous favela being murdered. You know, reasonable takes always come about on this day. But there is also other days, including Trans Parent Day, which according to the Trans Parent Day website, there is cake and there are wristbands. And you can make your own Trans Parent Day card. I don't actually know what this is. Like, it's just something which is there. But then there is also the all-important Pronouns Day, which I mentioned at the start, because you need to make sure you don't refer to someone like this as being a man, you absolute alt-right neo-Nazi bigot. And of course, we move on to the Q, where I'm kind of grouping in anything really, because that's what the Q kind of means. And so you have International Men's Day, of course, and you have International Women's Day, but you know, both of these are incredibly offensive and discriminatory, so it's very important that we have as well an International Non-Binary Day, which is held in July every year, where you have to recognise how important NBs are and their contributions to society, such as But then we also have other sexualities, including pansexuality, which is quite similar to being bisexual, where you're attracted to two genders, and instead being attracted to all the genders under the sun. Are you attracted to that sexy moon gender over there? Well, pansexuality is right up your street, apparently. But yeah, this is of course a very important and serious sexuality that everyone outside the queer community needs to respect. Now, the I in LGBTQIA is for intersex, of which they have 2 days: Intersex Awareness Day and Intersex Day of Solidarity. Because, probably, whilst they're not as well known as the tranners, they're certainly trying to get their own amount of days combined. Now, the A can have various different meanings within the wonderful world of gender and sexual minorities, but the A is quite signed off in a couple of different days, including Aromantic Spectrum Awareness Week, which is meant to spread information and awareness about aromantic spectrum identities and the issues they face. And they do face some very significant issues, such as the fact that nobody really cares that they are aromantic. There is also Asexual Awareness Week, which is an annual event that puts asexuality in the spotlight, because you really need to recognise the people who just don't have sex. And of course, A can sometimes mean ally, and allies have a whole week to themselves, where you have to learn how important it is to bend the knee to the LGBT. Make sure you know your place. And then we have various miscellaneous days that fall under the plus. We have Coming Out Day, which I mentioned earlier, but interestingly enough, there are also 4 individual days dedicated to bullying and harassment of LGBT people. International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia and Biphobia, Day of Silence, Spirit Day, and Wear It Purple Day. So 4 days just on effectively the same subject. And none of this includes the likes of LGBT History Month, of which there is 2, depending on where you are in the world, and of course Pride Month. The whole month dedicated to virtue signalling from various corporations throughout the world, telling them that they really want your pink pound. Despite the fact that you have that month dedicated to it, you still have to have all of these other days spread across the year. So what is the point of this video, rather than just educating you on the various different holidays which LGBTQIA plus people celebrate? Well, it's to kind of point out the overkill and ludicrousness of all of this. See, in addition to a whole Pride Month or a History Month, which could very much fall into the same category, we have to have various days that are covering the same issues. 4 on bullying, 2 on lesbian visibility or awareness, on bi visibility, on trans visibility, on all of these same issues. And what do they really do with it except for pass it off to celebrities, to corporations, to various people in government to give themselves a bit of a virtue signal and say, we stand with you because we recognise this day. Well, guess what? A lot of us LGBT people think this is dumb. We think this is pandering. And a lot of it just seems to be people giving themselves something to do, whether they can pat themselves on the back and say, oh look, I've made this really important awareness day. Well, as I said in the trans awareness video, why do you need this awareness? Aren't a lot of us just trying to get on with our lives? That we just want to be normal people in society? And yet there are these constant holidays, as it were, and the only people that really seem to recognise these are corporations, are people in government or various public bodies. That really seems to be it. Your average LGBT person on the street isn't really going to care that it is, for example, Spirit Day or Bi Visibility Week. What the hell are they going to do different, honestly? A lot of this makes us look like a joke, that we are these very precious people and we constantly need reaffirming by the world outside us to make sure that we're fully cared for. If you want to have awareness days, which can sometimes do good, especially when it comes to issues that people might not actually be aware of, rather than just make sure that you treat a trans person the way they want to be treated, but maybe, for example, healthcare, various specific issues that are being dealt with, why not focus it into Pride Month? You can have Pride Month as the month where you discuss all of these things. I mean, is that not the purpose of it in the first place? Cut down on all of these childish days and just focus on at least one specific angle and just deal with that. So thank you all for watching. If you enjoy my content, please feel free to like and subscribe. Also share this video. You can also support me on Patreon and Subscribestar. Thank you all once again, and I'll see you all next time. And a special thanks to Dan Norman, James C. George, Lizu Desu, The Poor of Rizzo, Rose Hypnol, Tranamate Girl, Green Potato Chips, Stephen, James UK, Moif Velocita, Leisha, Ricardo Jose, and the rest of my supporters on Patreon and Subscribestar.
Give it up, gonna be alright.